All right, welcome to another episode of the Fair Chase podcast. I'm here. This is James with Jared. We never introduced ourselves at the beginning, so I'm James. Jared, do you want to give a hi sign?
Hi, I'm Rod, and I like to party.
Yeah, there we go. And we've got we got a special guest on today. Former, and I didn't know this before you were going to join us on the podcast, but you've been on the Shark Tank.
I have, yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of claims to fame that you might have, but that's definitely one of them. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Christian Shaaf. I think I'm here because of my company, Uncharted Supply, which I started about 4 or 5 years ago, and happy to be here. I don't know. How's that?
That's perfect. I mean, yeah, that's fine. It's fine. You know,
I like to party too.
He likes to party too. And I'll also say, like, as I was getting ready to talk to you today, I was saying, I wonder if he's on any other podcasts. And you were on the podcast of the greatest football player to ever grace the field of Soldier Field, Jay Cutler himself.
Are you forgetting? I mean, listen, Jay's become a friend, but I mean, there's Walter Payton.
No. See, you don't understand. My love for Jay Cutler goes very deep. It's been strong for a long time. I've hung with him. One of the best days of my life, other than my wedding day and the birth of my child, was Jay Cutler getting traded to the Chicago Bears. I remember where I was.
Really?
Lost it. Oh, it was exciting. Yeah, cannon for an arm, flow, best buns in the NFL. He's got it all.
It's funny. I was on his podcast. I mean, I never met him, obviously. I was a Packers fan growing up my whole life, right? So we just played against him all the time, and I love watching football, but I'm not a person that digs too deep into sports, But and like the personalities and everything beyond just maybe like the Packers and a couple teams that I follow, but Jay, I've really enjoyed getting to know him. And actually, we just last night or the night before, we're going axis hunting in Texas the end of April, like 3 or 4 of us. So we've been texting back and forth, getting ready for that. We're gonna go bow hunting, and I'm excited to spend some time with him. He's a lot deeper than he came across.
Right.
Watching football games, and seems like a pretty cool dude.
Yeah, he does. He does actually seem like a cool. Then it's always like, I mean, I'm serious a little bit. Like, I've got some Jay Cutler jerseys in my closet right now, not to brag, but
what's up? We are going to thank a few of these sponsors that help make this beautiful show a reality for all of you. So Here we go. So a big reason, I would say, to why we're so successful and we have so many bucks on the wall is because we use HuntWise. HuntWise is a GPS mapping app that you can download on any phone, any platform. You can look up public land huntings, ORV trails. You can get the weather. They actually have a HuntCast 2.0 that they teamed up with Jeff Sturgis to make. It's awesome. You need to check this thing out. Go to HuntWise, download the app.
I feel like if you go into the woods without optics, it's like going into the woods without pants on. Would you agree with that?
To a point.
We are huge fans of running binoculars, spotting scopes, and different things when we hunt, even whitetail. I bring binoculars out every time I go. We choose Vortex Optics because they make the best glass in the business. They have an amazing warranty, super clear glass, super helpful people that work there.
Also, if you want to rep some sweet Vortex swag like this warm shirt on a nice fall day, head over to Vortex Wear. Thank you. And use the promo code TFC20 for 20% off your purchase. Saddle game, you need to be in it. If you haven't been in it yet, then you don't know what you're missing.
Yeah.
Trophy Line Tree Sales makes some of the best saddles in the industry. They have 3 different platforms that we use and that are awesome.
I want to make a quick plug for the Wingman with a couple steps. You can take one less stick, and it's like a combination of a stick and a platform. I've been exclusively hunting out of it this year, and my mobile setup is so sweet. I'm very proud of it.
Awesome.
I highly recommend the Wingman system.
If you're ready to pull the trigger on that and you want to get with James and do the Wingman, head over to the website and you can save yourself 10% on the purchase. TFC10 will get you that. I like to think I single-handedly got James to switch to compound again, but I'd probably be a liar and everyone would call me out on that. We shoot prime bows. We think they're awesome. Great accuracy, super shootable.
Made here in Michigan.
Made in Michigan, so we love that. It's hard to complain.
That's where Jared was made. So
surprisingly,
we like that. Yeah.
You're welcome. So go check out these prime bows.
We are of a firm belief that the arrow is the lifeblood of the archery industry. We've said it 1,000 times. But in all seriousness, we are huge fans of arrows that are durable, that fly well, and that kind of make up for some of my inaccuracies in the way that I shoot. So we shoot Vector custom arrows.
The hammer.
The hammer.
That's Thor.
They are made in Wisconsin by our buddy Isaac. Great arrows. And if you want to go and get yourself some, have a little bit of a discount, use TFC10 for 10% off. Or call Isaac up and tell him we sent you.
Mm-hmm. You want his phone number? Comment below.
Yep, comment below.
That's cool. So Axis, they don't have. Do they have a season in? You're in Texas, you said.
This is Texas, and as I understand it, there are seasons for animals that are native to Texas. Any quote unquote exotics or invasive species you can literally hunt year round, and you don't need a tag or anything. So like we were driving down there. One of my investors at Uncharted has a big ranch, like 5,000 acres, and he lets us go down there, once in a while and hunt. And we were driving down there, 2 months ago, and this huge axis buck runs across the road. And I was like, wait, they were like, yeah, you could shoot that. If you get a gun out, as long as it's not on the road, you can shot that thing.
I love Texas.
And I'm like, that's pretty amazing, like as it gets harder and harder to get an elk tag. And, it seems like all of the red tape gets thicker every year. In Texas, it's like, as long as it's not standing on the road, let it rip.
I mean, Texas is what every state should be. You can drink in your car, you can shoot stuff out of helicopters, and there's stuff you can hunt all the time.
I didn't know you could drink in your car, but
maybe I just made that up.
No, you can do that in Virginia. Drivers can drive people around drinking, but the driver
can.
The driver. The driver
pop?
can't. No, the driver cannot be intoxicated, but the passengers can have an open container.
Road pop. All right.
Well,
Not
in
Michigan.
Wisconsin, you could go to a bar with your parents. Didn't matter how old you were.
Okay, that makes sense. You got to watch the Packers,
Yeah, you could be 8 and go to a bar and like have a beer as long as your parents were there. So that was.
You know what? It's your parents' call, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's funny. So you're big outdoorsman, do a lot of hunting. We're observing the moose. Prior to you jumping on, Jared, I was looking at it. We found a good angle where it looks as big as it can possibly look, but it's a good moose. Did you say that was Alaska?
That was British Columbia, right on the Yukon border. Yeah, I actually positioned because the sun blasts in this room a certain way, and then I was like, oh, the moose also looks bigger. So this is a win. But he's a pretty big guy. I was telling you earlier. I went on a hunt, and I don't know how long of a story you want to hear. There's a YouTube video I made that it has a ton of views on this hunt. But we went to this kind of low elevation swamp the first couple of days there. I had this young 20-some-year-old Kiwi, New Zealand guide. It was just him and I, and we found this small moose with like 2 or 3 cows, and kind of determined he must be the dominant moose because otherwise he wouldn't have multiple cows, right? Yeah. So it's like, let's get out of here. And I kind of made it a point to try to drop my guide just for fun. And he's like, oh, you can move. I've always wanted to go moose hunt up where we stone sheep hunt. So we went back and repacked. And I mean, we were way, way, way out there. I mean, this is like float plane into a little lodge, and then you're horseback in about, 10 or 15 miles. And then you're hiking like another 6 or 7 and to this valley. And we got in there probably day 5 of a 10-day hunt, and we got up on this ridge, and I pulled out my scope, and I was like, we both saw him at the same time, and it was just like, he's like, I see one. I'm like, yeah. And he turns and looks, and I'll never forget it. It was like somebody adjusting a satellite dish on the top of like a TV truck, just those antlers came around, and he was like, do you want to go after him? I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, this is the biggest animal I've ever seen in my life. And he's like, well, later I asked him about that, and he's like, well, he was a couple miles away, and a lot of times guys don't want to put the work in, and we don't know how many points he has. Up there, it has to have 3 in the front, or I think it was 10 up top.
Right.
And we got in close, and we saw it. We never got a shot until 4 days later. But we would go back to that valley every day, and we would basically run these ridge lines. Like we'd drop our packs, put a light pack on, and jog. And we'd run a couple miles and set up in glass and run. And so, like I said, it was like 130 some miles over about 4 or 5 days. And we finally, like the last day, he was like, man, maybe we should start hunting back towards the cabin. Plane comes in like 48 hours. And even if we got a moose and getting him out, and our time is very tight. And I was like, it's him or nothing. I'm not going to feel good, shooting something else. And I'd rather go home empty handed, knowing I fought the good fight. And we came over the hill and he was just right there and we got it done. And that was probably I've shot like little bucks and that was the first time where I was like, oh my gosh, it was kind of a life-changing experience. It's just amazing. So gosh, anybody out there listening that's thinking about it, that's going, oh, it's kind of expensive, just go while your knees can handle it and your back can handle it.
Well, you get like a couple moose packs in your life before your knees shoot anyway. They're shot anyways. So
yeah. But it's a big commitment and I was hesitant to do it, but it's one of my favorite memories in life at this point. So it's fun. It's funny. You say like when you see them turn, like I've seen that quite a bit out west. You'll see them turn. It's like all of a sudden they're like lit up, like bright white antlers. You can see super bright, which is what that has to help them hear, right? Is that why they have them scoop like that? Is that I don't know why. Moose are super interesting. So a couple of days before that, actually, so when we came out of that low marsh area I was telling you about, that night we kind of went back to the camp and we had a couple hours. I was like, let's just go call and see. We're kind of on this lake. There's moose in there sometimes. Actually, most guys just would sit at that camp and drink their coffee and wait for one to come in and drink.
Right.
And I was like, hey, I want to work out. I don't want to sit here. I go crazy, So we never did that, but we had a couple hours at night, went across the river and or across the lake, and we're calling. Didn't see anything. And then the next morning, again, you can watch this in the video. It's hilarious. The next morning, I was in this little hut, and then they were the guide and his girlfriend was actually kind of like the wrangler, the horse wrangler, and kind of the the assistant. Yeah, she was a stud. She was like 18 and German, and they were both tough as nails. But I'm in this little thing by myself, and I'm repacking, and I just hear this moose grunt, and I'm like,
ooh.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, is he out calling? Like, what? And so I open the door and I look out. The lake's like, over here, and he's opening the door at the same time. And I pointed him like, was that you? And he's like, no, was that you? And I ran in and I grabbed my rifle and I came out, and this moose was walking across the lake towards the horses. And he's like, that guy probably heard us calling last night and just started walking. And so back to your point with the antlers, they can hear for a super long distance. And the thing he was telling me about moose is like, they don't really think about time. They're just like, oh, there's something over there. I'm just gonna walk, and they don't hurry.
I'll get there when I get there.
Yeah, they just kind of cruise all night, and they show up when they show up. And but yeah, those antlers are satellite dishes for real. And their noses are like that because they float. Moose usually eat like seaweed and stuff. So when they go underwater, it plugs their nostrils.
Is that why? Because they got that funny nose.
Yep. This light moves fast up here. I'm going to change level. There we go.
No, you're good.
Yeah. They have a funny nose, and that's what that does. Is actually floats and it plugs their nostrils so they can better eat underwater.
Awesome. We've talked about this a little bit at the podcast. Every time I go elk hunting, I stumble into moose. Mm-hmm. Like I've gone, several years, and I did bad on the elk front, but I think it's because I hunt them like whitetail, like for the first while that I went out. So I was like, all right, what do I know about hunting? No one ever told me what to do for elk. They just like go out and do it. So I'm like, all right, I guess edges, and sometimes I like swampy areas. Maybe elk will like that too. And it was just, I would just stumble on moose after moose. So never had a tag, because I was in Colorado, so they're hard to get. But
well, Utah, it's once in a lifetime out here. And it's funny because when you're hunting for elk, you see moose. And when you're hunting for mule deer, you see elk. And then you have a once in a lifetime moose tag, and a lot of people don't get it done. So it's funny. It's like whatever you're not looking for shows up. I took a buddy out. We were kind of late season elk hunting this year, and I think we saw 6 moose one day and 0 mule deer and 0 elk. And I was walking home, and I'm like, he's kind of new at this. And I'm like, I don't think you understand how weird it is to not see a deer and to see 6 moose in this kind of small area we were covering. So you just never know, right? And where I live, like spring, I was out jogging, and I'm pretty aware. I'm always looking for elk up in the hills. And I was jogging past this house, and I was like, I backed up, and there was this little like year-old bull moose just chomping away in a tree like 10 feet to my left. I've never seen one in this neighborhood before. And it's You just never know where they're going to show up. They're really wild animals for sure.
So you grew up, you said, in Wisconsin, and I'm assuming you started kind of your love for the outdoors and hunting there. Is that accurate?
Kind of. It's weird because hunting in Wisconsin, it, it wasn't that much fun when I was like 12 to 17 when I could hunt, or what is it, 11? I don't know when you start exactly. It's something like that.
12, I think.
To like up to like when I graduated and moved out of home, but it's freezing and you're sitting in a tree stand and
not
you're just
moving,
being quiet and waiting. And I don't know if it's ADD or what, but elk hunting where you are just using all the energy in your body is way more fun for me. So I used to hunt, but a lot of times it was like, oh, it's Thanksgiving and go walk this cornfield and dad and grandpa are going to stand on the other side.
Exactly. You're the walker. Dang it.
Or you get like the third or fourth best stand on the farm and you'd see a couple little does, you didn't shoot them, and it was okay. It wasn't really until I got into Western hunting that it really lit something up in me, because at that point I was doing triathlons and I was really into sports and fitness and working at a fitness app company. And so I was really thinking about human performance a lot. And then it was like, okay, throw 50, 60, 70 pounds on your back, go up into high elevations, move as quiet as you can, try to
have a very specific target, something to go after and chase.
And it's just fun. And I've introduced a lot of people to elk hunting now since I've been out here, and every single one of them now is just absolutely addicted. And a lot of them haven't shot one yet, but it's just, how it is. It's like something in your DNA lights up, and the next thing you know, it's like all you're thinking about. So Wisconsin, it was, I was really into like racing snowmobiles and stuff growing up. I grew up on a farm and I love nature and being outside, but I wouldn't say I was like a massive hunter until I left, and then I kind of really missed all of it, and I just dove in hard.
Yeah, we've had similar things. Both of us moved away. Jared moved out for the Marines, and I moved for school. And so early years, I mean, in college, we've talked about this a lot. Me and Jared would go hunting just for free meat, and just to get us through college, whatever. But moved away, lived out east, and there wasn't any of it. So when I came back, it was like I liked it before, but now I dove into hunting, traveling to hunt, hunting different ways, even in Michigan. And so it's funny how when it's kind of you go away and come back, it kind of is exciting that way.
You don't know what you have until it's gone, right?
Oh yeah. I can still remember being on the firing range in boot camp, and I was down in the pits. So usually how you have it, you split up into like two groups. You have one group firing and the other group is down in the pits, and you're pulling down these, 8x8 shooting targets, right? So you hear the bullet hit, pull it down, mark it, throw it up to tell the guys where they shot, pull it back down, put a little sticker over top of the hole, throw it back up so they can shoot again. And I remember sitting there, and me and this other guy, I forgot where he was from, but we just kept talking about, it was October 1st. Ooh, and we're like, man, if I could be in a tree stand right now, it's freaking awesome. But we're here stuck pulling pits and getting thrashed.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your service, man. You probably are a much better shot than most of us after all that experience.
He's always high to the left. I don't know what that means, but
it means you're squeezing the trigger wrong.
Yeah, that's right. Every time I see him shoot, he's like, gun goes everywhere, it shoots back. It's fine.
Supposed to surprise me, it scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So anyway, you mentioned, snowmobile racing. That's kind of how you spent time outside. You came back. You started this company that's kind of specializes in outdoor, not emergency gear, but like that type of survival type gear. Mm-hmm. Like, how'd you get into that? How'd you head that way?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, I grew up on a farm, so I spent the first, 17, 18 years doing that. Went to college in Wisconsin. After that, I started playing in a band actually, and it was kind of one of those things where I was like, I'm just gonna stick with this as long as it keeps going. It was like a garage band, then we were playing like local bars where I grew up, and then it just kept growing, and the next thing you know, it's like, I mean, we played in 30 some countries, traveled all over the world. I mean, I've sung national anthems at NASCAR races, and had had the opportunity to work with guys like, we shared a practice space with Soul Asylum, if you remember that band. And
Oh yeah.
I wrote songs with Phil Solem, who his most famous song is "I'll Be There for You," the Friends theme. He was in the Rembrandts.
Oh yeah.
And my drummer was and producer was Prince's drummer, so I got to be around those guys a lot. And
did you play him in basketball ever? Did you guys ever do a one-on-one?
No, but I asked about that Chappelle show. I'm like, tell me, man. And Mike said that Mike, the drummer, he's like, man, Prince would never miss. He just never missed. He was very short. I mean, like sub 5 feet tall short.
Really?
And he just didn't miss. He apparently was a really gifted athlete. So no, I didn't. He was a pretty, he was a big presence, when you were around him, and he never knew which way he was going to go. So the last thing I was going to do is like crack a Chappelle joke or,
right. He's heard enough, I'm sure.
Basketball. Yeah.
What instrument did you play?
I played a lot of instruments growing up. My mom had me playing accordion in 2nd grade, which was probably the least cool thing you could ever do. And then
it's sometimes, though, accordion is sometimes goes so uncool that it's cool. It's a circle that comes back.
If I could play it now, it'd be the best party trick ever, right? But in 2nd grade, not so cool. Played saxophone, harmonica. In the band, I played guitar primarily, sang. But anyway, so we were doing that, and we did that for almost a decade. And about 7 years in, I was kind of tired of it, and we got really close. We had a lot of record label interest, and we were playing big shows. But it's the thing about music is you never know if you're going to make it or not. Like I always tell people, they're like, "Why'd you quit?" I'm like, if I was a sprinter and I went to a 100-meter race and I knew the time I could run, I'd know if I was in the money or not, and I knew what I had to do to win. Right? If I'm running I don't know what the times are for those things, like sub 10 seconds, right? If I'm running it in 10 seconds and somebody else is running it in 9.5, I know what I got to do to get paid. Music, it's like I watch the most amazing musicians just play dive bars, and then I'd see some kid make a beat in his garage, and the next thing you know, he had $1 million record deal, and I just couldn't stand the non-linear, experience that was being in the music industry. So I was about to get out of it, and then we were at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and some dudes with high and tights came up to us after a show and said, "You guys ever think about going and playing for the troops?" And said, "Yeah, that sounds great." The next thing I know, my brother Zach and I are managing a significant amount of the entertainment going over during Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. So I went over 39 times. Our band played 150 shows. And then, I could just tell our band, you know this, like the show's like part of it. A bigger part of it is just hanging out with people, seeing what they do, talking to people, giving them a new face and hearing some new stories and just being an ear. But those are pretty hard environments. It's hot and your time schedule's all whack. And I could just tell my band was kind of burning out after like dozens of trips. And so then we started sending action sports and other bands. So I'd guide other people around and just try to keep the energy up. Right. So I did that for a long time, like 39 different trips to Iraq. There were 2 or 3 weeks apiece.
And how many years was that apart? Like,
it was over like, 7 years, 8 years, something like that. And then when I was home, I was going hunting or going mountain climbing, or I remember one time I came back from Iraq and I dropped my bags and grabbed other bags and flew to Jackson, Wyoming, and climbed the Grand Teton. And, it's just like I was always just moving. And so this was my life. And then, Operation Iraqi Freedom kind of wound down. They didn't have a need for us as much anymore. I had been doing some other projects and those things. I sold a company. We had done a documentary, that was done. And I was trying to figure out what was next. And I had an opportunity to go work in California at this fitness app company. And I was there for a couple of years, and about halfway through my time there, I'm living in Orange County, and it's just a completely different existence than what I'm used to. I mean, just massively different, but it's something I'd always wanted to do, and so I'm living and one New Year's, I'm like, I'm going to go to Steamboat to see some friends for New Year's Eve. And as I left Orange County, it was snowing, and it snowed like 2 inches, and we were just outside Orange County and traffic stopped. And I sat there for like 7 or 8 hours I remember opening the door of my F-150 and like kicking to see if it was black ice. I'm like, I don't understand why everybody's struggling,
Right.
And it was just, and my buddies are already in Steamboat. I'm getting pictures of a powder day, and they're like, "Where are you? You're missing the snow. I thought you'd be here by now." And the frustration mixed with a lot of time just sitting there. And I was totally fine. I had an F-150, I had all my ski gear. I knew how to drive in this stuff. Like where I grew up and where you grew up in Michigan, 2 inches of snow is like, it didn't snow.
Right.
Like,
That's nothing.
It was a non-event. Right. It was a dusting. Right. I mean, I remember pushing our school bus out of snowbanks when I was like in middle school. So, I was like, whoa, like all these people living out here in earthquake land, like,
right.
What happens if
nature hates California? Yeah.
Well, I think we've made California hate nature. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if you know this, most of the water in Los Angeles comes from Mammoth.
Right.
There's a huge pipe that runs all the way up to the mountains. And so now all those farms in between here and there are getting dusty, and that's affecting the almond growth. And it's Orange County is like, it's like a quilt, like a patchwork quilt of lawns with like, grass systems with roots that are like an inch deep.
Yeah.
And those need to be watered every day. Right. And if they don't get watered and those winds come in, they dry out and some spark falls off a semi somewhere and
it's
boom,
done. Yep.
Right. Done. So it's just, I think we have created that. But at the same time, we're creating this like chaotic environment and nobody knows how to fix or do anything. I mean, I used to road bike all the time out there, and I don't know how many times I'd stop and change somebody's tire because they just didn't know how to change a tire.
Right.
And that's an area that most people are dependent on technology. They have more kind of white collar jobs, and it's not that they're dumb; they just don't have the experience.
Yeah,
and
you've not done it a couple times.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just seeing all this going on. I get home from that trip, and I'm like, man, why isn't there a solution for this? And there's a very long answer, by the way, but that's what took me down the path of starting Uncharted. And the first product we built was like a 72-hour kit. We called the 72. And the reason 72 hours is critical is 95% of all survival situations, whether it's going in a ditch or September 11th, the cavalry arrives within 72 hours.
Right.
95% of the time helps there within 3 days. But what you do in those days can be life or death, right?
Yeah.
If you need medical, or you're freezing, or you don't have water, those things can quickly escalate a situation. So I was like, that's a pretty interesting thesis. And if you can, this means you don't have to have a bunker. You don't have to have $10,000 in gear. You just need enough to get by for a couple of days. That was kind of where I started. Seemed logical. It seemed like a small, affordable thing that everybody in California could have at the time.
Yeah.
And as they're moving from apartment to apartment, or maybe they don't have a backyard or a garage, this is coverage, right? And if we can provide everybody with this, maybe we can shift the outcome of a big situation. So that's really where it started. And yeah, that's what I've been doing ever since. So
no, it's cool. Like, so going back to the 72, right? Like, how'd you figure out what to put in there? Like, was that research, or how'd that work?
Well, first of all, you can go to ready.gov or FEMA. There's a million websites that'll tell you, here's what you should have in your emergency kit, right?
Sure.
So, okay, great. Not a lot of people. Some people, like some of my buddies, were asking, well, yeah, I got a kit, and they kind of couldn't remember what was in there. What's in this pocket? Oh no, it must be this. Oh no, it's here. Here's the thing I was looking for, right? And so I just kept kind of seeing what people had, what they thought. There were kits you could buy out there, but you'd have to go to an Army surplus store, and you go in the back dark corner, and you'd find some dusty JanSport backpack with like a bunch of stuff that didn't sell thrown in there, and they called it a survival kit, and it was like $75. And I was like, man, this doesn't make sense, So I went to friends of mine that were, the guys I'd met over in Iraq, guys I got to be friends with, some special forces guys, some medics, bush pilots that I met on hunts. I have a couple friends that are guides on K2 and Everest, and doctors and all these guys, right? And I'd put something together, and I'd show all of them, and I'd get feedback, and I'd change it. I just basically, what I tried to do was, I would go to them and say, hey, you're an expert. I don't want to know what you have for you, but let's say you have a 10-year-old son and you aren't home and something happens. Like, is this the right tool to give somebody like that? Because my perspective was, a lot of people that need this don't have the experience. They're not going to take a class. They're not going to have all that experience of camping on the weekends, or hunting, or farming, or whatever it is, where they're like, oh, I've been in something familiar, right? This is like, I'm like, if somebody's going outside for the first time, can you give them this, and it's going to change and improve their day? And the really important thing that I learned was gear is great. High quality gear and the right stuff, very important.
Love it.
But as important is knowing where it is and then knowing how to use it, right? So organization and kind of a trusted voice. And so we kind of built this system where everything's labeled and color coded, and there's instructions everywhere for like the most common things that happen. And the idea being it's kind of paint by numbers, right? You have something happen, adrenaline spiking. You've never been in this situation before, but oh, okay, broken bone. Here's 5 steps. Step 1, check. Step 2, check.
Quick
now
clap.
You're making a situation
Chop
better.
it off. Yeah.
Just tie that thing off. Broke the leg, had to shoot him. But no, it's giving people the things that actually make a difference. It's kind of reverse engineering from the time of need. And that was a real differentiator, I think. And that's what we hear over and over from people is, I have so much peace of mind when I open this thing up because I'm freaking out, and maybe the tool is in there, but I don't even know which tool to grab. But when I go over here and I say, oh, I have this, okay, grab this. Now I'm making the situation better. And as you know, if adrenaline starts decreasing, you can kind of slow your heart rate. You can think more clearly. Usually the answer is right in front of you. You just didn't see it because you're seeing red. So, that was kind of how we did it. And we got a product together, put it on Indiegogo, and we were off to the races.
Yeah, you guys have expanded into tons of things now. I mean, there's butt packs and dog packs and everything. Are you the one that designs those or thinks of those? Are you testing it out, or how does that look? How does that work?
I think so far all the ideas have come out of my brain, whether that's good or bad. We're actually trying to hire some product people right now because I am not trained in that at all. But yeah, I think the large scale emergency stuff is super important, but it's also, you buy a survival kit, and while I always say mine's like a go-to bag, not a go bag, I'm digging in it all the time. A lot of people just like to have that thing pristine in a corner and know that everything's there and they don't want to touch it, which is great. But for us, if we're trying to sell stuff and grow a business, you want stuff that people repeat purchase because they're using it and whatnot. So, like as you said, we just launched like this hip pack, which is amazing. And I know I'm maybe biased, but like I've always liked the idea of hip packs, but they always flop and they catch on the bike seat, or the bladder leaks, or there's not enough space in them. Once the water's full, there's enough room for a Cliff Bar and a multi-tool, and that's it, And so we just looked at everything, and we built a hip pack that like I'll pack that thing down and go for a 10-mile run, and I forget I have it on, which is an incredible thing to say. And we made it modular. I elk hunted with it this year. I mean, you've got these water bottle holders on the side that are micro molly you can pull off. And, I had one that I put a bugle tube in, and then I put a water bottle on the other, but I can take it off and put fly fishing stuff in. I can take it off and put a bear spray holster or a pistol or whatever, So it's just, a lot of times you don't need a big backpack, right? You have this big backpack and you got like this much stuff in the bottom, and your back's sweaty and you're banging it off trees and it's noisy. And so for activities like that, it's great, but also it's got a first aid kit and some gear repair in it, and it gives you coverage instead of leaving your first aid kit at your truck or your camp or your tent, right? Now you've got it with you when there's an emergency that happens. So, we're just trying to think about what the most common situations are, how to address them, how to kind of, I hate to say think outside the box, but try to create something new and different and better and find a better solution. And that's why we go from like survival kits to battery jump starters to pack rafts to hip packs. It's kind of like you're looking
what do you
for
need?
those big opportunities. I mean, dead batteries is like everybody's had a dead battery, right? And now we have this little jumper that will start an 8-liter diesel like that. And it's amazing. It's amazing peace of mind if you're a parent giving to your kid. It's awesome to have in your truck if you go for the weekend and come back and you left the dome light on and there's no cell service. Well, instead of spending hours figuring that out, you just plug the Zeus in, turn it on, and go home. And so, we just look at it that way instead of like, oh, we only build survival kits and now we're going to build 1,000 variations of the same thing. We're trying to kind of expand a different way.
Yeah, it makes sense. And the jump starter like rings true. I would say a lot of the trips that Jared and I have gone on, like hunting trips, we'll go out and come back and that stupid truck is dead. Usually a guy is around. Don't pin this on me, Jared. You're giving me the look already.
You pinned it on both of us at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, fair statement.
You've had that happen one time in Wisconsin.
Not true. I mean, there are many turkey hunts we've been on where we came back to the car and it's like, not turn it over. It's
Well,
true.
I mean, whether it's that or you get up to the cabin and you pull out your old John boat with an Evinrude in the back.
Yeah.
And like there's a million things that have little 2 or 4 stroke engines that have a little battery on it, and they sit all season, and then you go to pull them out. Snowmobiles, like whatever,
Yeah.
like my Harley in the summer, like maybe the battery's dead. Well, boom, here we go, and it's just that's the world we live in. People have those problems, and if we can make a solution like that that's cheap and super effective and consistent, that's really cool, I think.
Yeah.
So
that would have been nice. Growing up, every single summer I'd go and pull out the John boat to go fishing, and it was like, oh, gotta shoot, the battery's dead, gotta throw it on the slow drip charger. So maybe in a week or whenever it's done doing the stupid slow drip charge, I'll be able to take the boat out, take the paddle boat out in the meantime.
And then you try to start it 3 times, and you drain down those 3 hours that you did put in
exactly
there, right?
Yeah. And then I find out the whole time, spark plugs. If almost always my summer was spent taking a stupid lighter on the spark plugs, trying to figure out if they're,
Yeah. I mean that's that. Growing up, we had these Scorpion snowmobiles that would run for an hour, and then we'd fix them for 2 days,
Yeah.
and my grandpa had this old boat. I mean, I remember those moments, and it's just, maybe that informs what we do in some subconscious way of mine. But yeah, I mean, if you're out there doing this stuff, those things just happen. Yeah. And so you just trying to find solutions to make people's lives. That's like, people are like, oh, you guys do emergency stuff. Well, a dead battery may or may not be an emergency,
Right.
but a lot of times, people ask, hey, do you have any stories of like products saving somebody's life? And it's like, honestly, a lot of times our products fix the problem so early that it doesn't become life or death. Like, imagine if your car doesn't start and you're in a blizzard and there's no cell service, and now you go wander off and whatever happens, right?
Yeah.
Versus a 30-second start and you're on your way. I mean, it's just nice to know that we can provide that coverage in a lot of different ways. And every time we send a package out the door, I feel like we're making the world a little bit safer, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. People need to know those things. People need to have that stuff, and they need to be more ready than I think the average, at least American, is. Outside of certain areas of the United States are not ready for that.
Our society is so detached and so dependent on either somebody else or technology, and we all are in some way or another. Some of us have more skills than others, but I mean, sometimes I just sit back and think about where we are today versus like early settlers, and it's just our dependency on the system we live in just continuing to run is mind-blowing, right? I mean, if there was an EMP and all of a sudden anything electronics didn't work, I mean, you think about keeping medicine cold, you think about gas pumps not working, or ATM, I mean, you can't even get cash. I mean, it's just, we are so far down the cycle of depending on so many things that it's a little scary if you think about it.
It is. Well, I mean, with everything that's happening with Russia right now,
right?
It's not that unthinkable to think something like that could happen fairly easily. A power grid goes out. A lot of people don't have power. And like you said, most people, especially in major cities where most people are living, they don't have any skill because they have no experience for doing that. They don't have any tool to use. And so that could be a rough situation pretty quick.
We've been getting that question a lot, is like, what does this mean for people living in the United States, right? And Putin's over there talking about nuclear threats. The odds of that happening, I think, are extremely low. But
I agree.
To your point, I can see the grid going out. I can, like, if you just take that as an example, power goes out. Well, you can't get cash out. Gas pumps don't work. Supply chains break down. There's a cascading effect of just that if it lasts longer than 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And
Food, refrigerators,
food spoiling, all that medicine. You think about people with like diabetics that need insulin, and insulin needs to stay cold. Like, there are so many little things that you just don't think about because you're just so used to everything working. So that's always my message, is like, I'm really not a prepper. I've never been a prepper, but I think, like you guys, the more you get out and see what the possible is that can happen, as you're hunting and hiking and you things happen and you start opening your eyes going, wow, what if? It makes a lot of sense just to like have a couple things on hand just in case. And do I think we're going to get blasted back to the Stone Ages? for 1,000 years? No, I think we're talking this day and age, we're talking, a couple weeks type of a thing where maybe systems break down. And if you've got everything you need here, you don't have to go to the grocery store and you don't have to fight people for the last loaf of bread, and you're better off all the way along. So
toilet paper.
Yeah, toilet paper.
You need a bidet. That's all you need, Jared.
You need a bidet, dude.
I installed
bidet and a half.
Some of those little seat sprayer things after the last one. I was like, why not?
The warm splash.
Yeah,
I had a buddy who did that. And when the toilet paper supply went down, he got himself a bidet. He swears by it now. He won't go back. He's like,
I love them.
He's like, it's a mess. I would never go back. I've never tried it.
It's a weird thing to think about, and it's a little weird at first, but after you're used to it, it's kind of weird not to have it. It just makes a lot. You wash your hands, you wash your face, you take showers, you use paper for your butt. I mean, I don't know, like, it makes a lot of sense.
It does. You're making a lot of sense right now.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, I was watching your videos too, and I had a product idea for you. It's kind of a callback on a classic, but your dog is always following you. And you got a big, was that Burmese mountain dog?
Just mountain dog. He's right there. You see him just chilling.
Yeah, he looks like he's living the dream. But you get a barrel that you fill with booze, and you just, you know what I'm saying? The booze. So if some, kind of a callback to the classic.
So the St. Bernards used to carry brandy or whiskey around, and do you know the reason behind this? It's actually really interesting.
I was thinking just so you could go out drunk. I thought maybe that was the reason they had that.
Well, this day and age, that would be pretty fun. I've been trying to train him to like carry one around. He does not like it. But the reason they did that, those dogs, the St. Bernards, were bred by the monks that lived in the Bernard Pass. And the Bernard Pass was a heavily traveled corridor that oftentimes when snowstorms would pick up, people would get stuck out there and lose their way. And they would send these dogs out to find people. Now, slight tangent to that, the reason they carried brandy, you've always seen rock stars do shots of whiskey, right? Well, whiskey and brandy and all those dark alcohols, what they do is, when you take a shot and you feel that heat kind of like, it expands your capillaries and blood rushes in, and that's what that warm feeling is. So the brandy was meant to, the person drinks it, they feel warm all of a sudden, almost sweating. It was meant to warm them up so they could get moving again.
Really?
And rock stars do it because it's good for your throat. It actually heats your throat up, gets blood flowing, and you don't have like a dry, scratchy throat. Then you can sing better. So that's why they carried those things, which I think is really interesting. And we're actually working with a whiskey company right now where they want to do a signature whiskey with us, but I'm trying to push them to do it in like a bottle with a leather strap, whether it's a dog or like I just wear it to the bar one night for fun. Like I think it'd be pretty cool. So
that would be sweet. Whiskey is a beautiful thing. Like I used to do it before in law school. I did moot court. And I don't know why. I just would get so nervous. They bring in these area attorneys to judge you against another team, and so beforehand, me and my partner would just throw a shot back, and I felt like that just calmed my nerves, did me right.
For sure.
And opened up my capillaries.
Yeah, and you speak more clearly. Yeah, it's great.
I object.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of that. He's like, the whole time they're like, this guy's hammered drunk. It's not making any sense.
I object to that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So that Will Ferrell debate in Old School where he blacks out and like gives that answer.
Yeah.
Snaps back to.
Yeah. So you've kind of grown this into a pretty sizable company that has a bunch of different things you do. Do you take a lot of this? You mentioned taking that butt pack hunting. Do you incorporate a lot of what you're learning, what you're doing there at Uncharted into the things that you're doing in the woods?
Yes and no. I mean, the reality is it's interesting because like I had this conversation the other day. The difference between like camping and an emergency is one you planned for and one just happens all of a sudden.
Right.
But it's really the same stuff, right? I mean, you need to make shelter, you need to make a fire, you need to purify some water, you need to maybe have some and so that's where it's like, I mean, hunting gear is so good. And if I'm really going hunting, I'm using hunting gear. I've got Kuyu stuff and Sitka stuff and Stone Glacier. And, I've got very specific pieces because I know exactly what I'm doing. Now I'll take an Uncharted first aid kit and some things like that. But, our kits are designed to really kind of provide you coverage for a variety of things. So they're very generalized, right? And there's a lot of times I will carry, the backpacks we make, I will use those. Like one of my buddies, a really great guy, he sends me pictures all the time of people packing like meat out in them. I shot my elk this year, and it was funny. I last day of archery season, I went out, I went to work until like noon, and I had this like feeling, and I was like, I got to get out there. And I shot a nice bull. But as I was leaving the office, there's 3 or 4 people in there, and they were like, if you need help, give us a call, almost like taunting me.
Yeah.
And then I dropped them a pin, and I said, come on out. And then, they brought Uncharted backpacks because they're at the office. And I have this great picture of Kate, who works for me, with our backpack and just this rear quarter of an elk sticking out of it.
You gave her a whole rear quarter, huh? That's quite a boss there.
She is tough. Yeah. Well, there's 3 of us, and I was trying to do it in one trip. So
fair.
But yeah, the first aid stuff, absolutely. The pack raft that we make whenever I'm scouting or I'm going out for several days or shed hunting, I throw it in because there's a lot of times I'm up finding some high mountain lakes and or high up on lakes, and I can, I'll see some fish rising in the middle of the lake, and I can inflate that raft in 30 seconds and go out there and fish and pack it back up, and it's like 3.5 pounds. It's easy to carry. So, there's stuff that I use, but we're not building hunting specific gear.
Right.
The first aid kits we've got work really well. We've got one that's super tiny. It's first aid and gear repair. So you can put that in your shirt pocket, in your cupboard, or in your cargo pant pocket. We've got bigger kind of base camp type first aid kits. And there's a lot of tools in there that I pull out and use, but I don't necessarily carry a whole survival kit back in the woods. So, but that said, being out there doing this stuff informs so much of what I do. It's just, ideas are great, but I don't think anything's better than like experience. They always say like necessity is the mother of all invention. And when you found yourself in a situation where you didn't have the right tool, that is a really powerful moment. You can go back and then go, no, this is what works and this doesn't, and here's why. So it definitely informs it a lot. I use some of it. But that said, there's some great brands out there that I love, and I have no shame in saying, there's better hunter specific stuff with a lot of the pieces. There's a bit of a blend.
Yeah, no, it's funny. You do really. I feel like it's probably because when you're hunting, you're just out there a lot, but you figure out holes in your system or things that you need very quickly, and like hopefully you make that adjustment pretty quick, because that can be a pain. Like having an extra release for a bow hunter, for example,
right.
huge pain. And actually, you mentioned water purification. Having one, or knowing that yours. So backstory, I had the MSR filter. Those will freeze, and I've frozen so many of them because I forget when I'm out, leave them outside of my sleeping bag, and once they freeze, they're shot.
Yeah. They actually break those membranes, and they don't filter as well after, right?
Yeah, you're gonna get the poops. Yeah, you're gonna hate it. You're gonna hate life. So
this year I was out for 3 or 4 days, and I had one of our water filter bags at the seams break, and it's freezing cold, and you're trying to purify water, and half it's just running all over your hands, and took forever. And so we're building a new system right now, because I was like, that can't happen. That's, even if that was one of 1,000, like it can't happen. So
no,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Your whole hunt.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I've got this Steripen that I've used on and off, but I got another one somewhere over here, but I'm committing to it. But the problem with the Steripen is that supposedly it works and it's great, but it's like, it feels like you're putting a flashlight in your water, and like you're just trusting this flashlight to kill everything bad in there. And there's still chunks, but it's light and it's easy and it doesn't freeze. So that's kind of like, I've made the mistake of having my stuff freeze. So I'm going to try this and see kind of what happens.
Right. Well, it's interesting because there's filtering water, and then there's purifying water, right? And generally in North America, filtering water is fine, because the one thing that purifying does that filtering doesn't is it also takes out viruses.
Yeah.
Viruses really only show up in like pretty undeveloped countries. It's like a handful of African countries in the southern part of the continent. So the chunks aren't going to hurt you, and it's just a little extra nutrition
That's right. Protein.
So, yeah. So just put it down and don't worry about it. But I mean, I've been there where it's like, I remember when I was living in California, I made a mistake one day. I was up in Mammoth, and I rode into Yosemite. It was like a 150-mile bike ride, and I thought that the ranger stations were going to be open, but they weren't open for the season yet, and there was no water anywhere except this river running down the side of the road the whole way that looked really nice.
Yeah.
And I gambled, and I didn't catch anything, but I left and I was like, thank you, God, and I'm never doing that again. You know, and that you just learn, right? So you just got to put yourself out there, and you start realizing you can't really count on anything except yourself, and what's the right tool, you know? So
that's a chance you take.
Like, yeah, for sure. The Steripens are awesome, but you could crunch it, you could drop it, the batteries could die. I mean, there's no.
The batteries is the big one. The batteries could die, especially when it's cold out.
Yeah. You know what I saw the other day that I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, is a propane powered boot dryer. So, you know, like ski boots, like those, you have to plug them in, right? And it's a fan, it's heat, and the whole thing. I have one in my house from the ski boots. But man, I've been on some hunts where you're out there for like 2 weeks, right? And your boots are soggy, and it's freezing, and they're ice cubes when you put them on.
Yep.
And I can't remember who made it. Somebody made one of these boot stands, and you just screw in a propane tank and light it, and it spins this little fan and like dries your boots.
Does it work pretty well?
I mean, I don't have one. I literally got an ad for it the other day because I've probably researched this a million times. I'm like, how do you dry boots? Because that's like something that happens to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect. It's not like you're going to take it on a backpack hunt because it's kind of a big piece. But if you're an outfitter with a cabin and you were basing out of there and you're bringing stuff in on horses for the season, there you go, you know? So I love that stuff. I love that innovation. And man, who hasn't had wet, cold boots and it just sucks, right?
In the mountains, they're just like, they end up being like Herman Munster, like just bricks, you know, when they're frozen and wet and you get out. I know the feeling, like it feels like I'm there right now. You roll out of your tent, it's kind of cold. And it's like, I just got to put this piece of ice on my foot, it's already cold, you know, and then go walk around all day. It's brutal. Yep.
It's like put on a cold life jacket. Like at the end of the day, when you're on the boat, it's like, oh, you know?
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, there's always those little things, right? That's something that affects so many people. And how do you fix that? How do you solve for that? So I don't know. Anyway, tangent, but those are the things we think about a lot, you know?
Yeah. That's the one that was on top of that. And camping. So you're going on a backcountry hunt. Are you a pillow guy? Do you pack a little like inflatable pillow?
So I have herniations in C5 and C7. So that's up, you know, base of my spine or base of my neck, right where my spine starts. And if I can't get my head comfortable, I don't sleep. So I've got a couple different options. If it's a couple days, I will use my sleeping bag sack and stuff it full of t-shirts and use that. But I do have this little inflatable sleeping bag that weighs nothing, and you know, I usually throw that in. It folds up to about the size of a deck of cards, and you can 3 puffs and blow it up and you get a pillow. So yeah, I you know, one of the things I try not to skimp on is sleep, because I just believe so much in the power of a good night's sleep when you're trying to perform and you're trying to think clearly. And if you're not sleeping on day 5, day 6, day 7, everything else sucks. So if I have to carry another, you know, 10 ounces in to get 20% better sleep, I'm signing
pretty
up
worth
for that.
it. Yeah. That's where I'm at. I'm looking, it's like the whole time I'm like, well, do I need a pillow? You know, sometimes I have one, sometimes I think I don't, I'm fine, you know, and I'm fine. But like you said, the times when you're not sleeping, the rest of like it ruins your whole day. Like you can be shot if you don't sleep well at night. You just kind of suck when you get up. You're not really looking very hard. You just kind of have a bad attitude, and it ruins the rest of your day. And it can tank a hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've worked at that. You know, I wear Garmin watches nonstop, and I track my sleep every night. And at this point, I get better sleep in tents than I do in my house. And I think part of that is just the electric signals, the Wi-Fi going around. I know that I've read a lot on how that affects you, but you know, when I typically get a high 70s to low 80s sleep score at my house, and I'm getting a low 90s in a tent in like the Brooks Range on day 8, it's like, I'm pretty pumped about that, actually. I'm
That's
like,
so
this
cool.
is cool. We're figuring it out. So
yeah, I do you put your phone on airplane mode at night?
I don't. Well, I have it set so it doesn't buzz or send me
Right.
notifications between a certain time period. But no, I don't put it on airplane mode. I maybe should, but
I read that you're supposed to. You're supposed to get those waves or whatever away.
there's so much information out there right now on biohacking. I was just convinced a few months ago to buy one of these big red lights. I don't know if you guys have seen that. And I've got that thing, and it was like a couple grand. I was like, this is maybe the craziest thing I've ever bought. But the guys that told me to do it, they are smart dudes that have tested this and everything else. And if those waves can actually speed up the mitochondria in your body and help your lymphatic system and help you burn calorie, whatever, right? I gotta believe a 5G antenna next to your head at night for 8 hours is probably doing something as well.
We just kind of like released it, and there's no like, we're the test. At some point, someone's going to be looking back and be like, those guys were having a phone near their crotch like 10 hours a day, and they're surprised about what happened.
Yeah,
we're going to be those guys.
Counts. Yeah. I mean, there's so much of that happening. I can't remember what podcast I was listening to. It might have been Rogan or something, but they were talking about how like our DNA is still like just a little progressed from caveman. Like humans evolve, but very slowly, but technology is evolving like 1,000 times faster. And we are operating in an environment that our bodies haven't caught up to, whether it's artificial light or the food we're eating or the vibrations or whatever, and I really believe in the power of nature. My buddy Michael Easter wrote a book called The Comfort Crisis, and he breaks down everything from like how much time you should spend in nature. And when you're doing that, don't even have headphones on, because you have to have just nature, and the powerful effects of that from scientific studies. It's incredible. It's mind blowing. The power of just getting outside. I mean, I love my dog because he makes me get outside for a couple hours every day, even when I don't want to. I mean, I'm pretty much an outdoors guy, but there's rainy, crappy days. And we'll go out for a hike for an hour or two, and I come back and I'm like, you feel like something's healed. You feel better. It's an interesting time for us right now, like having technology evolve at that kind of like doubling, tripling, quadrupling hockey stick pattern, while our bodies are slowly trying to adapt. There's a disconnect there for sure.
Yeah, well, and like you said before, I mean, aside from our bodies, just with the environment, we're so far removed in a very short period of time in terms of the skills we have to go out in the woods and enjoy ourselves and actually do it safely. So it's a weird time to be alive, but dogs are great. The other trick for getting outside, so in Michigan, we have long winters, but we have small game hunting. So I'll take my dog out. If you bring a 22, you're hunting. You're not walking your dog. You're in the woods hunting, and it feels totally different than just like, oh, I got to take the dog for a walk. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go. So I've got so many squirrels in my freezer right now. If you need some, I got your squirrel meat covered.
I love it, man. I used to do that in Wisconsin too. I go out and shoot squirrels when I was younger. For me, it's I mean, I live in a neighborhood out here with a lot of houses. I can't really walk around with a gun.
They're going to be freaked out if you shoot their squirrels out of their front yard. They won't. Well,
the weird thing is I carry a weight vest a lot, and it kind of looks like a bulletproof vest. So I've had a couple times where the patrol pulls up and they're like, "What's up?" And I'm like, "Walking." And they're like,
"Gonna wreck some shit."
And I'm like, "Oh, it's a weight vest." They're like, "Oh, we got a call." So I imagine if I added a 22 to that, it probably wouldn't be favorable. But I do love shed hunting. So that's my thing, where it's like I'll end up, I'll wear a 60-pound vest and be out there for 4 or 5 hours and put on some podcast or have a phone call about work, and my dog's with me, and it's just some people might think it's a waste of time, but I think it's like time really well spent. It's amazing. Yeah. And by the way, I found so many antlers this year. I took him to this furniture store where all the Californians that have moved out here shop, and I traded them in, and I got a new couch, which is
that awesome. The one behind you? That couch?
Yeah, this.
Heck yeah!
That couch right there.
Antlers for a couch? That's sweet,
right? I mean,
dude,
that's pretty awesome. I was stoked.
So how long did it take you to earn the couch?
Oh, that was probably like 2 years of antlers. That said, I gave them away like crazy forever. I mean, if I had friends come visit or like they had little kids, I'd go bury them and try to get them to go find them and make a big deal out of it. That's pretty magical for a kid to just find a horn, as they call them. Like, oh my gosh.
That's horn.
So I probably gave like 30 or 40 of them away, but there's a lot of mule deer where I live, just a ton. So, I find 30 or 40 a season, and I just took a truckload in one day. And
I just read this great article. Was it in the New Yorker, Atlantic?
Yeah, it was. You sent it to me.
Yeah, I think it was the New Yorker, right? Am I right with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was just talked about the antler industry. Like shed hunting is such a thing. Like competitive, cutthroat people.
I've never done this, but in Wyoming, which is just down the road from me, apparently shed hunting opener.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are trucks lined up, and like when the buzzer goes, like people are running into the woods, like it's like a Easter egg hunt at church, like
right.
It's like a thing, I guess. I really want to go see it sometime, but fortunately where I live, like I said, I'm in this like kind of private community where I don't think nobody used to go look for them. People don't even understand the cycle of antler growth out here. They're all, transplants. It was funny, like, was it January or February? A couple women walked by in snowshoes, and they're like, "Hey, Christian." I'm like, "Oh, hey." They're like, "We're going to look for antlers and get ahead of you this year." And I was like, good luck, man.
You're in the right spot.
I wasn't gonna tell them that they're not dropping for another, 2 or 3 months. I was like, "Oh, hope you find some."
You're going to have a deer attached to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But pretty funny.
Sometimes the early bird does not get the worm.
Nope.
When it comes to antlers.
No. Everything's about timing, for sure.
That's right. That's really true. Well, Christian, we're coming up on time. I appreciate you spending an hour just, shooting the shit with us, putting up with our nonsense. Fun, but for people who are looking, we talked a lot about the things that you're doing. If they want to look at Uncharted and follow you and the things you're doing, what's the best way they could do that?
Yeah, I mean, we've been an online company since we started. So if you type in Uncharted or my name or 72 or anything like that, we better pop up because we spend enough money to make sure that happens. So you can find us there. We're also in Bass Pro Shops, Cabela's, Sportsman's nationwide, Shields, a lot of hook and bullet stores. So not all of our products are everywhere, but you should be able to find something of ours in all those places. My Instagram is at Christian Shaaf. If you ever have a question, I really look at this as like a mission-based company. I wanted to make the world a better place. I mean, I obviously want to make some money so I could go do cool hunts and helicopter ski trips and stuff. But it wasn't just about money for me. I wanted to make a difference in the world and try to make the world a better place. So I spend a lot of time every day answering questions for people or trying to find them the right answer, connect them with the right resource. So I'm happy to do that. If anybody ever has a question, just hit me up. I usually try to respond pretty fast, and I'm just trying to be here to help and enjoy this life we have.
Yeah, awesome. No, you're doing a great job. It's fun to follow you. I mean, you've got a very interesting story. I mean, there have been twists and turns that we didn't even get into. I mean, from band playing to the Middle East to whatever. But we thank you for your time. And so everybody go check it out. Christian, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks guys. It was really fun.